Good day, this is Pastor Michael Mitchell at God's Barn Church. How are you doing today? I haven't been on the air for quite a while. I've been taking a vacation, a sabbatical. But we have, you may have last heard, I've been invited to Mecca and to Palestine to preach the gospel there to thousands of people. I think Mecca has 12, no, I'm not sure. Mecca has 12 mosques I'm to preach at, and Palestine, I think there's 12. Anyway, it has all kinds of implications, obviously. So what I wanted to do here is I want to give you the sermon that I'm going to give them. You see, this pretty much the same sermons, so you will understand. And then when the Holy Spirit moves among you, then this will make sense to you, hopefully. Okay? So I'm going to start with Abraham. You see, after the fall of Eden, when Adam and Eve were kicked out, and then they started reproducing people, there was no laws made. People married their sisters. People married their aunts. People married their uncles. It wasn't wrong. It's only wrong if you know it's wrong. And if you don't know it's wrong, it's not wrong. You see? Now that was the problem that presented there. And what you had on this earth at that time, you had billions of demons. Billions of demons. And they had, Adam and Eve had just been put out in the gate there. They had to live with them now. They couldn't live in the Garden of Eden. The Garden of Eden was cleansed. There was no sin in there, okay? They couldn't live there anymore because they were sin, you see. So they had to get out here, you see. And that started the reproduction of their kids. And they lived a long, long, long time. So anyway, it got up to where there was a guy named Abraham. And it tells a lot of exploits about him in the Old Testament. He is the originator of our faith. You see, Abraham was so well liked by God that his likeness, his accountability that he gave God equated to faith, which equated to salvation, you see. That's how he did it. There was no Messiah. There was no Jesus Christ. There was no God. There was no God. Who was he going to pray to? He doesn't know. Until God told him, you see. And that's what he did. He went through a whole series of events, really fascinating stories, you see. But then as the time coming past there, Abraham had a bunch of kids. And one of the kids was Ishmael and Isaac. And those were all kids. Ishmael was from a handmaiden, a servant slave, you see. Totally common at that time. Totally common. Those people had dozens of concubines, if you will, or whatever you wanted to use that term, where they made babies with them, you see. That was the name of the game, is to reproduce. Seriously. But nonetheless, this is what I think happened. I think during that time, between the time of Adam to the time of Abraham, I think until the time of Noah, when they destroyed mankind on the earth. And then it started over again. But what had happened there was plans were being made to have the Messiah return. Way, way, way off. But what God was looking for was, he was looking for a genetic line, you see. A line, a birth, a line. It had certain things. It had to be complete Hebrew. It couldn't be another, half Hebrew, half this guy. It had to be a Hebrew person, you see. So this DNA football was given to Isaac. And Isaac is to go and reproduce, and down his seed will be the Messiah, Jesus Christ. You see. Now, keep in mind here, though, but none of the other kids, Ishmael, there was other kids there by Abraham. They were not given this. They were not given this mission. Isaac was, you see. So anyway, during this time, everybody was worshiping demons. Everywhere. Everywhere. Mass orgies of people. Having sex and drugs. Summoning demons to live with them. It was everywhere, everywhere, everywhere. And this was a time, my friends, after Jesus Christ came, all these creatures I talk about went and hid under a rock. But then they had no impunity. They could go anywhere they want and do anything they want. There was nothing nobody could do, you see. That was the problem. And the problem was, if you did not get a Messiah to defeat this monster, it would destroy mankind. That's essentially what it is. So, then, what happened was that then Moses came along through the families from Isaac. And what they did was God, Jehovah, Allah, took those Jewish people and he had the Egyptians enslave them for 250 years. Why? Because he had to keep them from intermingling with all these demonic people out there. Once they intermarry with these people, it will destroy the tribe. It's like a wasp in a beehive, you see. That's what it is. If one falls, they all fall. Yeah, one falls, they all fall. So anyway, so Moses created the laws. Now the laws did not cure your sin. It merely showed you what the sin was, you see. And the only one that ever could take that sin away was the Messiah that was 1,000 years from now. You see that? That's why they had to develop a system, a temporary system to worship God, you see. And that's where the caliphate comes in. A caliphate is where a group or a nation is ruled by a religious leader, you see. They've been out through all of history. Primarily, the Jewish people were one of the first caliphates, and Islam has had caliphates come and go for centuries, you see. Now, why is that? Why did they have to do that? Well, again, it's there's two ways to worship Allah, God, Jehovah. One is through the flesh, a human endeavor to worship God, and one is through the Spirit. The Old Testament is through the flesh. You had to earn your way to heaven. You had to do good things. You had to be good. The Jewish people had to put a thing on their head to remind them of what to do, you see. Because at the time, there was no spirit in them. No, they may have walked with God, or God was on them, but he was not in them, you see. And their spirit was dead. It wasn't dead. Well, it does say that in the Bible, but their spirit was not awakened yet. Right? And that's where, when you become a Christian, it awakens your spirit, you see. And then the Holy Spirit and Jesus Christ come and dwell in you. But I'm getting ahead of myself here. So anyway, that may explain why in the Old Testament that God was a vengeful God. And he would go out, well, he did Sodom and Gomorrah. He just destroyed them with fire. He would wipe out whole tribes of people. Zap them out. Why? Because they were flesh. Their spirit was not alive. It had rejected that offer, you see. So now their spirit has a demon inside them for the most part. Multiplying, you see. Now, so what happened? Why did they do this? Okay, so, you see, after you become a Christian, you can't kill anybody. You know that? Why? Because after Jesus came and he made alive our spirit, you can't kill that person because they are the image of God. That's why man was made from the image of God. And I don't mean 2 eyes and a nose and 10 fingers, okay? The spirit man in us, that's his image. He's a spirit. So he made us in his image, right? So he made us in his image. So he put his spirit in us. Whatever way you want to understand or comprehend that, you see. That's why we don't kill anybody. No, because that person, until the day he takes his last breath, has the chance to repent and be saved. Prior to that, they couldn't do that. If you did something really bad, just think how much you'd have to work it off, for goodness sakes. And that's where people take evil and make it good. So they will not be held accountable in a human court, you see. But it doesn't matter, because in the court of God, you will be held accountable for this. Okay. Does that make sense? You have 2 methods of worshiping God. An Old Testimony, an old contract, versus a New Testimony, a new contract. The New Testimony just simply overlays on the old contract, completing and filling out all the necessary things that was prophesied, you see. So, does God allow this? Yes, he does. Will that bring people to salvation? Absolutely, it sure will. Meaning, without Christ, they can work their way through heaven. But it's hard. It can be very perilous. It is. It's just the way it is. And I'll discuss that more about you, where I've met hundreds of spirits that were thousands of years old that never met Jesus Christ. But they had the Spirit of God on them, you see. So I'll give you some proof on that explanation before. But what he wanted us to do is to go from working in the flesh to worshiping him in the Spirit, you see. It's a better way. You see, if you go out here and you take a herd of water buffalo, and you go out there and you take a spray can on one buffalo, and you spray an X on there, you know that? That animal will not live a week, because every lion, tiger, whatever it is, will focus on that animal with an X on it. And it literally can be able to focus on that animal, and all these lions can focus on one creature because it stands out, you see. It's the same way with Satan. It's the same way. One that stands out. One is not accepted by this beehive group. It's death for them. That's what it is. That's why there has to be very, very, very severe laws on insubordination or anything that could be blasphemous or anything in that nature. Not only that, the people under the old laws their ancestors are responsible, and their future children can be held and be responsible for their sin up to 7 generations, my friends. You don't want to do that. You don't want to go that way. There's a better way, a way, way, way better way. But again, each way is permissible, whether you want to believe it or not. There's no way in the world a little girl out here, 14, 15 years old, that's a Muslim girl that goes to mosque 80 times a week, is going to die and go to hell. And I'll tell you about that when I do my sermon on the vision. But I do want to show you something here that I will just talk about here real quick. Okay. Now, this is Romans 11. And I want to find you a verse here, and I don't exactly have it, but I think I'll take it. See. Okay. It says, verse 5, it says, even so then at the present time also there is a remnant according to the election of grace. This remnant they're talking about is the people at this time that have converted from Judaism to Christianity. Okay. An element. A remnant remaining. A remnant remaining of those people at that time that were literally destroyed because of their unbelief in Jesus Christ. That generation was wiped out. And if by grace, then, it is no more of works, right? Otherwise, grace is no more grace, right? So if you work, you don't get grace. But if it be of works, then there's no more grace. Otherwise, work is no more work. That's what we have here. You see, it's merely a transition to a spiritual plane, worshiping God in a spirit form. You give up. You submit. You realize there's no way in this body you can please God, Allah, Jehovah. There's just no way. I guess if you locked yourself in a cage somewhere and they threw food in there or something and you never heard anything, except just constant, prayer and stuff, you got a good chance at it. But it's not necessary, my friends. It's not necessary. And this will unfold more and more and more as this gets on here, okay? So I've laid the groundwork of that. I've laid why there are caliphates. Now, let me do this here. Okay. All right, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do a sermon. It's kind of a long one. Out of Matthew 24. Matthew 24 is a prophecy of Jesus Christ concerning 3 different things. 3 things. And I'm going to speed this up because it can take a long time. 24, Jesus went out and departed from the temple, and his disciples came to him to show him the buildings of the temple. This is right prior to Christ's execution. This is probably in the wintertime. What they're doing is they're going through the back way, through the Gentile court, because it's warmer. It's protected from the weather. And Jesus said, you see all these things? Truly I say unto you, there shall not be one stone here, one stone upon another that shall not be thrown down. Now these stones are, 26 feet long, 12 feet high. No, 12 feet square, 26 feet long. They were dragged in there. Herod Agrippa, he went and spent a ton of money in that thing. He took those stones and he put all kinds of gold inlay in there, just beautiful gold work all throughout those stones, all over that building, everywhere there, everywhere. It was spectacular. The roof of that temple was copper or gold, and you could see that temple for miles upon miles when the sun shined on it. Okay? And as he sat up to the Mount of Olives, so where he went from there and he went right up to the Mount of Olives, which is an olive orchard, where he conducted his business. And the disciples came to him privately, probably 3 or 4 of them, saying, "Tell us these things. When will this be? And what shall be the sign of your coming and the end of the world?" 3 things. When are these things going to be? When is the temple going to be destroyed? And what shall be the sign of your coming and of the end of the world? Okay, 3 things. And Jesus answered him, "Take heed that no man deceive you. For many shall come in my name, saying, I am Christ, and shall deceive many." 6, you shall hear rumors of wars. See that you are not troubled, for these things must come to pass. But the end is not yet here. 7, for nation shall rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom, and there shall be famines and pestilence, and earthquakes in many places. All these things are the beginning of your sorrows. They shall take you up and deliver you to be afflicted, and they'll kill you, and you shall be hated of all the nations for my name's sake. 10, and then many will be offended and betray one another, and they shall hate one another. 11, and many false prophets shall rise and shall deceive many. And because iniquity is abound, the love of many shall wax cold. 13, but if you endure to the end, you'll be saved. 14, and this kingdom of the gospel will be preached in all the world for a witness to all nations, and then the end will come. So 14 verses. I'm going to go back and I'm going to explain just what's going on here. The problem is with the movement of the Christian movement was they're taking all this data here and they're applying it today, you see. And what they did was they did this in the 40s and 50s through the evangelical movement, was to create this fear, post-trib, pre-trib, 7 years this, 7 years that. It created this bundle of information that is just not there. So anyway, it says, "Don't take heed, no man will demand you. So many shall come in my name, saying, I am Christ, and deceive me." Okay. Now, after Jesus was killed in 33 AD, it emboldened the zealots. The zealots was, Judas Iscariot was a zealot. He was the one that betrayed Christ. He was the one that was so important that Satan personally indwelled in him. Okay? These were bad people. Demonic, evil people. Bad. For many will come in my name saying, I'm Christ, and should deceive me. So what you have is you have this big city, right? A very little country, and there's just these little villages all over. And they're all sheep herders and goat herders and farmers and stuff, right? So what happened here is, after Jesus is gone, then like everybody had a Christ, you see. Everybody, all these, well, I'm the Christ. Yeah, we're going to go and we're going to get an army and we're going to go down there. And then the next village goes, well, no, I'm the Christ. I got my family here and we're going to go down there and we're just going to kick these Romans out. And there was a Christ a day there. In fact, what happened was a guy that was named Judas. He's the one that led the whole destruction of Israel. He said he was the Messiah, for Pete's sake. So that's what he's saying there. Anybody now that says they're the Messiah, they put you in prison, lock you up in jail, or give you drugs. And it says, you shall hear of wars and rumors of wars. See that you're not troubled, for these things must come to pass, but the end is not yet. He's not talking about the end of the world. That's the third question. He's talking about the end of Judaism, the end of the temple. Okay? That's what he's talking about. You'll hear wars and rumors of wars. See that they're not trouble, for these things must come to pass, but the end is not yet. This time there during Rome, they had 4 Caesars. Caesars. A Julius Caesar. A Caesar is a title. He's God. He's equivalent to God. They had more problems in that kingdom at that time, coming and going. They were just zapping these guys out. 4 of these Caesars. One was Nero. Nero literally burnt down all of Rome. What he did was he loved to build things. He ran out of room to build, so he just burnt down the city, blamed it on the Christians and Jewish people, and built more stuff. But that hadn't come yet. That's the absurdity of these people we're talking about here. Right there. Wars and rumors of wars. They had a war a day. They ruled half the world. For nation shall rise against nation, kingdom against kingdom. There will be famines, pestilence, earthquakes, and fire plague. Well, yeah, it's just like anywhere in the world. You ever known a world where there's no famines, nobody starving, earthquakes? Right after this, shortly after, they had a massive earthquake in that area. Not only that, they had a bad famine, so bad that just a few years later, that's where Paul and Silas went to go get food or money for food to distribute among these people, because there was a huge, huge famine there. And this is the beginning of their sorrows. Absolutely, this is nothing. Then they shall be delivered up to be afflicted, and shall kill you, and you shall be hated of all my nations for my name's sake. Okay, here's what you got going. So, during that time, I got something on here just driving me nuts. Well, it ain't going to come on. During that time, here's what was in Jerusalem. Okay, they killed Jesus, right? So then Peter came on board. Massive preaching seminars, revivals. Thousands upon thousands upon thousands of people are getting saved. Then you got the Jewish people from all over there that are coming to Jewish temple. They have to come 4 times a year. 4 times, 4 ceremonies, right? 4 times a year. Everybody goes there. You got that there. You've got all the Christians there. And you've got the Romans there that just put down this nasty thing with Jesus there. It is a literally maggot-infested hellhole. It's just the way it was. You put all these people in this one place. Now, and this gospel of the kingdom shall be preached in all the world for a witness unto all nations, and then the end shall come. That's exactly right. That's what I'm doing. You see what has happened is, again, we have Muslims and Jewish people. Their birthright is through Abraham. Christians go through Jesus Christ to be in Abraham's tribe, you see. That's the 3 tribes. That's our God. There's other gods, but that is our God. That's the God of Allah, Jehovah, and Abba Father. The same God. And I'll explain that to you too. Now, 15. When you therefore see the abomination of desolation, spoken by Daniel the prophet, standing in the holy place, who reads this, let him understand. Then let them which be in Judea flee to the mountains. Okay. Back, I think about 30 AD, who was that? Really nasty army came in there. I can't remember. Israel was captured, built, torn down dozens and dozens of times. Everybody in the world at one time occupied Jerusalem. The Babylonians for 250 years. 250 years when the Jewish people were taken to Babylon, Iraq. So anyway, I kind of lost my page here. Okay, right. Okay, the abomination. So what they did was they went in this temple, and they went in there and they sacrificed pigs in this temple, and they did demonic offerings to their gods, and then they urinated in there and defecated in there, and all those things they could do to defile that. You see, that's what he's spiking about there. That's what Daniel is talking about. So here's the deal. what he's telling you, got all these people here, and they live in a valley, right? And you're going, okay, I'll put it to you. Okay, when they get to the temple, inside the holy building, when you see this, let them which be in Judea flee into the mountains. Now you gotta imagine this. You see, as this went on and on, more people became zealots. You see, there was more zealots now. And it got to a point where there's about half the people were zealots and half the people weren't. You know what I'm saying? So, here's what happens. When the Roman armies came down and invaded the country of Israel, and I'll explain that to you, you're trained to go to the armed city, the walled city, right? So all those Jewish folks went to the city of Jerusalem in there. It's huge walls, big thick walls. They have enough food in there for 7 or 8 years for everybody. When you go to these buildings and do a siege, it could take a decade to do that. We have to starve them out. It's really what it is. It's not they don't go there for a day and do it. It takes months, years. Anyway, so here's what happened. All the Jews, all the Christians fled to the mountains. See, this book was written, Matthew, before this happened. Okay, I'll give you some dates here. About 66 A.D., there was a ruckus there between these zealots and the religious leaders there in Jerusalem, you see. And I think somebody got killed there, and that freaked them out. Okay, man, those Romans were like, we're paranoid of this. Because they, you know. So anyway, I'll just finish it up. Let them which is on the roof, the housetop, not come down to take anything out of the house. Yeah, you know, their houses are flat. And you go up in there in the evening and you sleep up there when it's hot. You know what I'm saying? Or you eat up there, whatever. You know. So that's what he's saying. If you're up on a rooftop, don't come down and take anything out. Run. Run like crazy. 18. Neither let him which is in the field turn back to take it. No. You're out there in your field and you see this happening and you know they're in the temple. You're gone. You're gone. You're gone. You're gone. And you're meeting people running to the temple. No, no, no. 18, 19, and woe unto them that are with child, and to them that give suck those. Yeah, you're walking around with a kid on the breast, dodging between trees, trying to go somewhere that you have no idea where you're going. 20, but pray you that your flight be not in the winter, neither on a Sabbath. Obviously, the reason for winter, the Sabbath, because they would have stayed right in that temple and they'd went there and killed everybody right there. Because they wouldn't have left. They would have not broken Sabbath. They would have not broken Sabbath. No, I don't care what. You see, that's what he's saying. Bad move. Bad move, because you'll stay there and you won't leave and they'll kill you. 21, for then shall be great tribulation, such as was not since the beginning of the world to this time. No, nor ever will be. To this time, 33 A.D. From the time of Adam and Eve to this time is the worst persecution, tribulation. Well, let's define tribulation. Tribulation is not mass murder. Tribulation is angst, anxiety, worry, concern, like we are now. We've been in tribulation, man, for like 30 years. That's tribulation, trials, tribulation. Okay? (22) And except those days should be shortened, there should be no flesh be saved. For the elders' elect's sake, those days shall be shortened. The elected people that are determined or been presented with what to do in the future. If you go and you let this thing go on, they will kill all these people, so that the Mohammeds or these people that are key in history will be killed. It will destroy the lineage of the future people that God chose a long time ago to carry out his work, you see. And And for shall arise false prophets, false Christ. There shall great signs and wonders, insomuch that it was possible that they shall deceive the very elect. Yeah. Yeah, they had tricks. They're still... Listen, everybody up there in these hills was not Jewish people, devout people. They were up there worshiping Asherah poles and Baal and the fertile god and Mother Earth and all that stuff too. And a lot of these were mixed in with Judaism. It's just the way it is. It's just the way it is. Catholicism has pagan rituals mixed into that. We have Easter mixed in with us. Sure. So that they shall deceive the very elect. Well, they did. They deceived everybody, every rabbi, every leader in Israel, all the holy people was deceived by these monsters. They went with it. Deceived, they wiped them out. Yeah, okay, that sounds good. Well, let's go do this. Wherefore, if they say unto you, behold, he's in the desert, going on forth, because he is in the secret channels, believe him not. Yeah, what they're doing is they're not meeting in Jerusalem. They're out in the desert. We're going to have a church meeting now. We're going to go out in that desert and we're going to worship together. Don't do that. Don't do that. 27. And as the lightning comes out of the east and shineth, even unto the west shall also the Son of Man be. Now, he's moved on to his questions, right? Let's see. I'll go back to the question. His next question was, what shall be the sign of your coming, right? Right? So he's moved on to question, right? So let's see here. And that is the one where this. For as the lightning comes out of the east and shines even into the west, so shall also the coming of the Son of Man be. So now he's changed the question. Now keep in mind who he's talking to. He's talking to people that live in this little valley, right? Little valley, and they got a big town here, right? And everything's around this town. So they want to know when you're coming, because I may be out plowing the field up here in the North 40, and I may not see you. That's the way they're thinking. I would be too. A man 2,000 years ago, Excuse me for a minute here. Let's finish this up. Yeah, exactly. So they're saying, like, you'll see it from the east to the west. It's like this, east to the west. You cannot miss it. And it says, forever the carcasses, there will the eagles be gathered together. Could be eagles, could be buzzards, could be crows. What he's saying is you're along there on the desert, and you look over there, and you see buzzards circling. You know there's a carcass there, don't you? Sure you do. Exactly what he's saying. You'll know it. You will not miss it. I guarantee you, you will not miss me coming. Now, 29. Immediately after the tribulation of those days shall the sun be darkened, and the moon shall not give her light, and the stars shall fall from heaven, and the powers of the heavens shall be shaken. I should get this for you. But if you go to the crucifixion of Christ in Matthew, it will tell you at the 9th hour, I think to the 12th hour, what happened. It got eerily dark, quiet, eerily dark. The moon was not reflecting the light from the sun, you see. And that's where there were people that come out of the grave, running around town, eerily. That's what he's talking about. That's already happened. The moon won't give her light, and the stars shall fall from heaven. It was daytime. I don't know about that. And the power of the heavens will be shaken. Absolutely. Absolutely. If you can make it dark during the middle of the day at noon, yeah, you got something going there. 30. This was a tough one. And then shall appear the sign of the Son of Man in heaven. And there shall be the tribes of the earth mourn, and they shall see the Son of Man coming in the clouds of heaven with power and glory. He's describing his ascension into heaven. Appear the sign of the Son of Man in heaven. Remember, 33 AD, he was crucified there. That's kind of important, and that's what he's saying. And the earth will mourn. We've been mourning ever since for 2,000 years. And they shall see the coming of man in the clouds of heaven with power and great glory. 31. And he shall send his angel with a great sound of a trumpet, and they shall gather together his elect from the four winds, from one end of heaven to another. He's talking about heaven now. He's in heaven. From heaven to another, right? Okay, so now, that is what he's describing for when he comes there, or when he's going to come. And what will be your sign? A lot of this you can see. A lot of these things you can't see. You may not see people with trumpets, and you may not see Christ riding on a white horse. Nonetheless, those are the things he's explaining, what's on the earth and what's happening there. We're still in 33 AD. Right? Now he does a transition, okay? He's answered the second question. Now he's going to transition here in 32. Now learn a parable of the fig tree. When its branch is yet tender and puts forth leaves, you know that the summer is there. So in other words, you can tell. So likewise, when you see all these things, know that is near and even at your doors. Right. Those people, they're near, even at your doors. And 34, I say unto you, this generation shall not pass till all these things be fulfilled. That generation, okay? Now, let me give you a little more. Let me kind of figure this out here. So here's what happened here. So you're in your house, and you've got 12 kids, and you've got your brothers and sisters, and all that, and everybody in the village is probably related to you. You know that. And you go into the temple, and what happens is that part of your family hears this guy named Peter preach, or Paul, in the outer court. They see a crowd, they're looking, and before they know it, they're a Christian. What? Don't tell Dad. Right? So you now have a family that has Christians in it and Jewish people in it, you see. But here's the deal. God was okay with that. He didn't have a problem with that, did he? Just like it would be today. Muslims would agree. He didn't go zap them out. No, the religious leaders said, go zap them out. So here you are, and you look out the window there, and you see these dudes walking, these priests, man, they got these big hats like this. And then behind him is a squad of Roman soldiers. For a while, they had their own militia that was granted to them. So you go out there looking. Hey, what's going on? How come Ishmael was at those Jewish people there, at that meeting with those Christians there? Oh, I wasn't doing that. That was him. Man, it's not me. Well, it wasn't me. It's her. It's him. It's her. It's him. Well, it's your mother. It's your father. You see what that would do to these people? And they're hauling them off. They're dragging them out of their house, you see. That's what they're talking about. Man, they're wiping them out. If it wasn't the Jewish leaders getting them, the Romans were getting them, you see? Now, heaven and earth shall pass away, but my words will not pass away. 36, but of that day and hour knoweth no man, no, not the angels of heaven, but my Father only. I have a story about this, and I will explain to you, and we will talk about God's role and why God knows this answer and Jesus does not. 38. As in the days they were before the flood, this is Noah, They were eating and drinking, marrying and giving in marriage until the day that Noah entered the ark. And then it came not until the flood came. And they didn't know until the flood came, right? And took them away. So shall be the coming of man be. 40. There shall be 2 in the field. 1 shall be taken, 1 left. 2 women shall be grinding at the mill. 1 shall be taken, 1 shall be left. Watch therefore, for you know not what hour the Lord is going to come. 42. Know this, that if the good men of the house had known when to watch, the thief would come, he would have watched and would have not allowed him to go in his house and breaking it up. Therefore you be ready, for in such an hour as you think not the Son of Man comes. Now that is to all of us right there. That's all. He's already speaking about being dead, coming back, okay? Comes back, right? That's what he's talking about. Yeah. Anyway, I'm going to end that part there, but now I'm going to tell you what. So anyway, what the point is here, and this is so messed up in religious theology. Here's your end times. You're gone. That's it. That's it. There's not 7 years of this, 7 years of that, put in a hole, taken out of a hole, marched off and having your head cut off. That's all it is. Everything that has been done is done. It's finished. It's over with. You don't have to ride this stuff out. The phenomenal thing is that most of these things that are going to happen is after you're gone, or it's happened hundreds of years ago. Hundreds of years ago. I want to clear that up. I want to clear that. That is how important it is for us to understand that. Now, if you're a person in the flesh, like the Jewish people, like the Muslims, you're going to go through all kinds of tribulations. Worse than the Christians will do. Absolutely. You have no spiritual protection, my friend. You have to circle the wagons. But warn you, if you get led astray, you have no protection there. You see, I want to tell you something. God corrects, Jesus protects. Never forget that. God corrects, Jesus protects. Okay? That's just the way it is. Now, let's talk about the 3 gods of Christianity. This is a very confusing thing for people that primarily, I suppose Jewish people and Muslim people. Okay, so this is where we're going to change our story a little bit. Because now we're going to go from a flesh relationship to a spiritual relationship, okay? All right. So, and I'm going to tell you that the next sequence, I'm going to tell you a story of about 15 years on defiled land. It's going to tell you all these things about all these creatures I saw and the battles we did and all these things with them, you see. But the point is, I started this from a vision 3 years ago. 3 years ago. I'll be in Medina, Lord willing, in a week. And in Palestine in 2 weeks. This is to preach to millions of Muslims. And that's what we're going to do. But you see, as you will find out, Christians have a great burden, a huge problem of condemnation on them. And we're going to talk about that. That's going to be in the next segment tomorrow, okay? I just want to see if I'm wrapping it up where it's a point of going on. Oh, let me finish this. Oh, my goodness. Okay, here's what happened. So anyway, so there's always, see, they're running in the desert and they're getting these groups together. Well, in 66 AD, like I said, there was a shoving match there. Well, they'd had it. And they're going to go down and they're going to siege that city. Okay. So then, lo and behold, one day, almost a legion Roman soldiers came down. There were legions 6,000, but they weren't quite a full legion. And they were conscripted soldiers. They were not citizen soldiers. They were soldiers that had been captured from other countries. They were good troops. They were good, but not as good as the professionals are, usually within the army. So they went down there, and they got around that city, and they're throwing arrows up there, and they're blocking stuff off, and they're harassing them and stuff like that, you know what I mean? And it takes years to do this. So I don't know how they were. They were only there about 3 or 4 months. And one of these days, this general gets up and goes, "Hey, come on, we're going." And they just walk off. The zealots are like, "Man, God answered our prayer." So the zealots did this. They went around and they ambushed those Roman soldiers. See, they have to walk back to Italy. They walk back to Italy. Well, they can take boats in, but they walk. I mean, I don't know what it is. I don't know, 500-600 miles? I don't know, something like that. Yeah, they walk it. So anyway, they went back and they attacked them Romans. And they killed a bunch of them, you see. And the Romans left and got home. And the zealots come back and they're like, "Man, God's with us. Man, we did this. We've got this going. We destroyed him. We ran him out of the country." At that time, to this day, the Roman soldier was probably the most powerful fighting man on the earth. They had such a well-established militia that the thought of somebody ambushing and killing Roman soldiers, it's a death sentence. It's literally a death sentence. It's the worst thing you could ever do. And when they got back there, maybe it took a month back there, and they sat down and they said, "This is going to end. We're done. We're done, right?" And the Jewish people went, "Yeah, man, we got him." Well, then what happens here, and this is what Christ is talking about, at the northern frontier of this country, there's 2 legions of soldiers coming down, walking down through this country to Jerusalem. And they are dragging people out. They are killing them. They're raping them. They're butchering them. They're killing their kids. They're going in every synagogue they can and destroying it, destroying all the religious material. They're gathering thousands of people as slaves. Because you see, in order to, siege a building, generally what you have to have is hundreds and hundreds of slaves. And I'll explain that too. So they're all now slaves. Then, not to be sure, remember when he says, "Flee to the mountains," right? Because there is a legion that lands on the shore of Jerusalem. Don't go by boat. You won't make it. Go to the mountain. And that's what they did, like I said. So that's what you have there. So they go there, and they surround. Well, they can't really surround it because I think it's on the back of the cliff there. But they start sieging this thing. And I mean, they handpicked the generals. Like the general's nephew was given this great, it'd be like a great war hero going, "Here's the key to the city. You get this honor." Oh, thank you. What an honor. So anyway, all these people are up in Jerusalem, see. So anyway, they're shooting arrows and this stuff. Well, the Jewish people come out. And they fought them, and I mean they did, to their credit. They come out on the plain there and they fought them, but it was they give them a good tussle, but it was just inevitable, They just wearing them down. And here's what the zealots did. The zealots didn't think that the people were fighting enough for them, so they had 7 years of food there. So they decided to defecate and urinate on the food, making it unclean to eat. You see, that would motivate them more to fight. So then what happened before it was done, those Jewish people were eating their kids. The Jewish people were eating their kids in there. That's right. It's historically accurate. Well, they got in what is called the high area, or the low area. And they went there and they killed them all there. And then the low area ran to the high area. And then they killed them all there. And then they got into the temple right there. That's the last thing there. They killed them all. They drug them out. They marched them all. They were either in lion dens, crucified, slave labor, something like that. The ones that had the ephod on and the Jewish hats and stuff, those were of great values to those. Those would be faced in the lion's den, where they let him out in an arena and watch lions eat them. So anyway, but in the meantime, not to be outdone, another, 500 zealots go to Masada. Masada is this big, huge monolith that overlooks Jerusalem, I think. And I think Herod's got a big castle up there. I think it's Herod. And that's his summer home, and he looks over it, Well, what they do is there's a synagogue thing up there. Well, they trip up this rabbi that's in charge of it, sneak past him, get up there, and maintain this insane thing there just to get away from the Jewish people, or excuse me, the Romans. Well, the Romans, they got to him, and they just built a road up, and they just kept sending up, building with they had the Jewish slaves building to get up there, these ladders, and they're killing them with rocks, and one falls, and then another one goes up. One falls, they just continue that. Finally, what happened, they knew it was inevitable, and they committed suicide. And the only way that they were able to save Judaism is one rabbi snuck out a Torah under his coat and was able to escape with it. That is. But what is my point on this? Here is my point. And it applies to everyone. Caliphates are only made to last so long. And they're only made to last until, at that point, the crucifixion of Jesus Christ. Now, the next time the caliphate we have probably will end when the return of Jesus Christ. Just like it was. He left, caliphate ended. He comes back, caliphate's going to end. That's the way it is. It's in a built-in system. It's a necessary thing. It's not the best way. That's what they tell you throughout. It's not the best way. There's a better way to do this. But it's the person's choice. That is the person's choice of that. And what they choose is up to them. And if they're good, they will be honored. If they're not, then they'll be thrown away just like everybody else. It's pretty much the way it is. You see, that's what's happening now. We're getting real close to the return of the Messiah. And this is the last thing, you see. And I'll explain more on this in the vision about how these groups work together or work against each other, you see. But does that make sense? That's why. That's what happened to Israel. Besides, two more things. God lived in that temple. He lived there, right? You know that. And when he left, when Christ died, they had this big, huge curtain in there, 40 feet tall, and it ripped from the top to the bottom, signifying that God did that, because no man could climb up that curtain and do that, okay? They didn't have a 40-foot ladder, and they wouldn't have let him have a ladder in there. So what that meant to us is that we know God left the building, and he came back in 40 days and lives in us. We're now the little temple, you see. That's the way it is. That's how we got power to defeat Satan. That's what he gave us for, to defeat Satan. You see, we are the temple. And not only that, we know we have eternal life. We have it now. We have it right now. I'm immortal. I am immortal. I will live for a zillion years. And if you know Jesus Christ, you will too. It's the name of the game here. Okay? But don't worry. It's good news for everybody. Good news for everybody. This is a win-win. This is a win-win. So that concludes it here. It's about an hour. I'm going to turn it off, and I'm going to do probably another one, part 2, and we're going to pick it up from here. Okay? Peace.